Harry Belafonte once said, "Sometimes the good Lord makes himself a person who holds the vision of God and what is possible for the world. And that vision guides him as he grows and struggles. And that man is dangerous to the sloppy ways of the world because that man loves truth more than he loves his own life." Martin Luther King Jr. was such a man. And because he was, there is and has been a great and aggressive move to water down his message and to sanitize his words and to make him comfortable to the status quo and make him acceptable to the American palate. There has been a move to hijack the very identity of Martin Luther King Jr. But we must be clear that Dr. King's message was both prophetic and radical, rooted in the radical message of Jesus Christ, which was his foundation. Dr. King was tied to a God of love and justice. His loyalty was to God, and his faith is what summoned him to his activism. Dr. King was uncompromising in his commitment to eradicate war and racism and poverty. He was ever determined in his quest to tear down the door of justice and opportunity that stood closed to the masses left outside. Martin Luther King Jr. was uncompromising in his charge to subpoena the conscience of America and demand that America stand before the seat of morality and face her hypocrisy and make good on the promises that she put down on paper. Martin Luther King demanded, as he said at the funeral of the 4 little girls in Birmingham, that we must not only arrest the person who created the bomb, but we must arrest the society that created such a man. He called us to dismantle the systems of poverty, racism, and injustice. He called us, yes, to do acts of charity, but also have the courage to demand and fight for justice and demand and dismantle any system that was unjust. Martin Luther King stood up against hoses and dogs, bullies and bullets, and yet he never compromised his commitment to nonviolence, teaching us that love is still the most powerful weapon in the arsenal of truth and justice. Martin Luther King challenged us to set aside our safety and our success for the greater good of all humankind. And he commanded us to live in this selfish world with a sense of otherness. Martin Luther King Jr. on April 4th, 1967, confronted the evil of the Vietnam War and encountered the attack and the denial of some of his own supporters and preachers throughout this country because he was committed to the world house, and he reminded us all that truth has no borders. Martin Luther King, in his letter from the Birmingham jail, gave perhaps his harshest criticism for the community of faith whose silence has made them co-conspirators to evil and injustice, whose silence has made them passive supporters of the status quo. He challenged the faith community to rise from their beds of apathy and come out of the comfortability of their padded pews and stained glass windows and recover from their spiritual laryngitis in order to reclaim their moral conscience and recommit themselves to the ministry of the valley. Yes, Martin Luther King was not one of political correctness nor of safe theology. Rather, he believed that the church ought to be dangerous to evil, dangerous to injustice, and be responsible to shatter the darkness with light and expose the lies with truth and display the weakness of hate when it's faced with the power of love itself. And because of that, 50 years ago, while standing on this balcony, evil and the forces of hate sought to stop him and shut him up, only to find out that a bullet could silence his voice, but not his message, nor the truth that lived in him. For this reason, I challenge you, brothers and sisters, and myself on this 50th anniversary, that we do not make the mistake that America would like us to make, and that is to gather here and around the world and simply remember Dr. King and relegate his life to some nostalgic or historic event and then continue on with business as usual. Because if we do, then we become the present-day co-conspirators of his assassination. For the worst injustice that we can do to Dr. King is to simply remember him. But if we want to honor Martin Luther King Jr., then we must be willing to pick up his mantle, accept his prophetic call, and continue his uncompromising mission. We must preach the sermon that he never got a chance to preach and remind America she may go to hell if she does not repent for the evil injustice and the abandonment to the poor of this country. For America has too long reneged on her promise to ensure life, liberty, and happiness to all of her citizens. And thus America risks being sent to hell by the very God they say they honor. Brothers and sisters, we live in a day where the chains of injustice continue to hold masses of brothers and sisters in captivity. We live in a day where morality has been downgraded, and we are experiencing a spiritual blackout. We live in a day where truth has been tucked away in the closet, and hate and supremacy and entitlement has been given a new breath by a president who has made them their friends. And while Confederate flags may have been lowered, their spirit flies high and strong across America today. We live in a day where religion has been hijacked and government is dysfunctional. Our children live in fear of a bullet and in a country who has a love affair with guns and chosen blood money over the children's blood. And yes, where black lives still don't matter in America. And masses of people crawl under viaducts to find rest and garbage cans to find food. Yes, we are in a country where the cries of the masses of people 50 years ago are still crying for just wages. Yes, brothers and sisters, the question for you and I today is whether we will rise up to the challenge before us and push the hand of this midnight hour to the dawn of a new day and dedicate ourselves like Martin to the suffering and alienated. The question is, will we wake up our outrage at the disparities and the unequal playing fields that have become an acceptable norm, replace our cynicism with hope and our fear with faith? Will we purpose our hearts to take the venom out of the hate of the bloodstream of America's veins and give her a transfusion with blood, truth, justice, love, and righteousness? Will we commit ourselves to holding America accountable for what she has promised us? Or will we be assassins to Martin's assassination by our silence? We may not have been here 50 years ago, but we're here now. Don't be an assassin. Continue his legacy.